So, dear ladies and gentlemen, here we are with people live in the room for the first time for a very long time, but we also have people calling in virtually. So it's a great pleasure for me today to welcome you all to the official launch of the CADRI digital tool. The tool that was co-created and developed by over 20 partners together, a tool that can be seen as one of the few tools that span across the humanitarian, the development, and the peace nexus, a tool that strengthens disaster risk reduction and also anticipatory action. With an increasing number of conflict, climate-related disasters, emergencies like the COVID-19 pandemic and Ebola outbreak, the importance of preparedness across socioeconomic sectors, ranging from health, education, agriculture, water, sanitation, infrastructure, etc., becomes apparent. It's apparent for us to work more coherently together. It's only together that we can ensure that we build a better future for the generations coming. Today I have with me or maybe first we'll check the agenda so everyone online also can see this. So we have a distinguished panel with us. They're highly experienced. They're the global experts on disaster risk reduction and anticipatory action. And I will not read every person's bio because you can find them on LinkedIn. But I assure you that these men and women you see on the panel have extensive knowledge on disaster risk reduction from a variety of countries around the world. We have Mr. Ronald Jackson from UNDP, who is co-chairing CADRI. We have Mr. Dominique Bourgeon from FAO. We have Ms. Carla Leinhardt from the CADRI Secretariat, as well as Mr. Shang Shu from IFRC with us today. And it's an amazing pleasure for me today to have this distinguished panel with us. And I will ask every one of them to give a few words around CADRI and what they think is important with disaster risk reduction and building the future, enhancing preparedness and systems to strengthen the most vulnerable and support people in need. And I was told that Mr. Ronald Jackson from UNDP will start. So please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Angelica, and greetings, good morning to the colleagues joining us here in person and for those joining online. I greet you wherever you are in the world. My offering really, when I think about CADRI, I think about a number of very important words which we hear, and we often struggle with some of them. You know, I think about partnerships, coordination, efficiency, effectiveness, and value proposition. You know, and those are certainly terms, words that I want you to take away with you as you go through the session today, but also after you leave here. So what is CADRI? What is this partnership about? And really and truly, it's for me, coming from a national government, particularly in the Caribbean, where I first met this idea of CADRI. I think it's a wonderful celebration of partnership within the UN system. It's a partnership which involves 20 UN institutions and including the IFRC, drawn from across the development and humanitarian system, working across the entire SDGs. And these are very important things to note because they are certainly emblematic of our own journey within the development space, whether we look at it solely from a development standpoint or where we think through the implications of an event, an adverse event. And we've come together and really built this unique facility for countries, member states, as we want to speak to them, to access at one go a range of expertise across disaster risk reduction and climate change. We can say climate change adaptation. By pooling our respective resources, and here we're talking about knowledge, capacity, even financial resources, and our experiences and practice, we're able to leverage each other's comparative advantage and to provide countries with this one-stop mechanism to mobilize expertise on risk reductions around various socioeconomic issues as we seek to achieve the broader 2030 development agenda. The important thing to note about the CADRI methodology is that it is centered around nationally driven capacity diagnosis that considers and concerns of member states, in particular their needs of the most vulnerable people, the marginalized communities, and the population groups. The capacity diagnosis is an analysis of desired capacities against existing capabilities and capacities, which allows us to generate the necessary understanding of assets and needs and to inform a pathway to really address those capacity gaps. It's important that we note that it is a whole of government approach, a whole of society approach, and the partnerships provide the UNCTs and the humanitarian coordination teams with practical tools and expertise to improve their understanding of risk and governance systems in the context of an increasingly more systemic risk environment. We ask ourselves, what's the value proposition of CADRI to the UN system? I think it's a very important question. And again, you know, it allows me to reflect a little bit about my own time as a national government or as a regional actor. The partnership is emblematic of the UN's systems reform agenda that is providing new impetus for UN agencies and programs to offer an integrated package of support and work in a coordinated manner. And I talked earlier about some of the key words that come to us, coordination being one of them, and something which, oftentimes, if we're being honest, we all struggle to work in a coordinated environment. But here in CADRI, it is happening, and it is happening quite well, as some of the beneficiary states can attest to. The CADRI methodology helps to build synergies between humanitarian and development partners, and you would have heard our moderator speak a little bit of how we've reflected on this from the lens of the HDP nexus, but also as we seek to bring this integration between disaster reduction and climate change adaptation. Here we have an initiative that is bringing these two things together within the context of looking at capacity assessment. In addition to supporting joint analysis and joint programming, CADRI partnerships help to build the CADRI partners' own internal capacities as well, for, in particular, risk-informed programming. And it's a term we've heard used quite often, certainly within the context of the Sendai framework, and where you're seeing greater investments in enhancing that aspect of it. It offers a platform to advance individual agencies' DRR and CCA agenda. The sector interventions become more impactful through the CADRI engagements as they are completed by other sectors. But more importantly, I think the key question is, what is the value proposition for governments? Think about many different agencies coming to you at different points in time to do a capacity assessment. Well, here you are able to dock a one-stop shop where you have this integrated lens. I would say a much lighter touch than large inflows of individuals coming to see you at your doorstep on this issue. It works together with countries in a government-led process to shift from response-centric systems to risk-informed planning in alignment with the Sendai framework priorities for preparedness and prevention, but to reduce socioeconomic losses in particular. And more importantly, it brings CADRI partners to help government to develop planning instruments to implement a whole of government approach to reduce disaster risk, climate risk across sectors. The CADRI partners assist countries to operationalize their national disaster reduction and climate change strategies by identifying priorities for investment in key socioeconomic sectors. The methodology supports identifying the right policy methodologies, equipment, financing mechanisms, and skills required to integrate disaster reduction and climate change adaptation. Most importantly, the CADRI methodology helps countries to operationalize their humanitarian response plans by integrating risk reduction measures or by facilitating the development of multi-hazard, risk-informed contingency planning across a range of sectors. It helps to prioritize areas for investment in early warning and early action. What is the tool? And I'll briefly touch on this because you will hear from many other speakers on this. The CADRI tool for capacity diagnosis and planning supports these CADRI processes. It facilitates the process of countries identifying integrated solutions to address and manage multidimensional disaster and climate risk in a government-led, participatory, and inclusive process. Government-led, participatory, and inclusive process, backed by experience and technical knowledge of a range of CADRI partners. The use of the CADRI tool is embedded in the CADRI engagement process, and you will hear a little bit more as we go forward. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. That is extremely well said. I mean, this tool is there to save lives. It's to ensure that we don't have more disasters. It's not coming in afterwards, it's preparing, it's anticipating. And with us today, we have Mr. Dominique Bourgeon, the director of the Liaison FAO office here in Geneva. And I'll give the floor to you. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much. And like Ronald, I'm really happy to be here with you today, either in person or virtually, for the launch of the CADRI tool for capacity diagnostic and planning. This is indeed a very important step in the, I would say, the CADRI life. And it's clear that at the outset, I think it's important to congratulate the CADRI Secretariat for the work that has been done in developing this tool. What is important to mention also at the outset is that the development of this CADRI tool is based on the demand received from the CADRI clients. And the CADRI clients are governments, of course, at the center, but also the UN country team and basically country teams. And basically they were requesting CADRI partners to develop standardized capacity development methodology for DRR and CCA within and across sector. And I think, and Ronald touched on that, I think it's important to keep in mind that, to my mind, this is very emblematic, and you use that word of the UN development system reform, as basically we are telling the governments and through the UN country team, the government actually, that basically they have a one-stop shop. They have a one place where they can go to get information from across various sectors on how to indeed ensure that they have the right approach to disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. I think we need also at the outset to thank the government of Luxembourg, because the government of Luxembourg is the one that has been supporting the development of this tool, and we are of course grateful to them. The CADRI tools, of course, is based on the expertise of the CADRI partners. 20 of them are participating in this partnership, and this is what has enabled us and the Secretariat to develop this so-called question bank, which is the repository of knowledge, and which essentially provides the framework to guide the capacity diagnosis process. And this capacity diagnosis process is actually based around 5 capacity dimensions: governance, implementation capacity, financing, knowledge, as well as technology and equipment. And of course, this is very important. You mentioned that this is about saving lives. What is also interesting in this, when it comes to this CADRI tool, is that it can be applied in both, I would say, humanitarian and development contexts. And it can be used not only by governments, but also by, of course, representative of civil society organizations. So this is, I mean, very inclusive in terms of its development. And perhaps what I can do now is take a few minutes of your time to say what are the key characteristics of this tool. And I think essentially there are three of them. It's about integration of DRR and climate change adaptation. It's about gender equality and inclusivity, and it's about conflict sensitive approaches. So all this being included in the CADRI tool, recognizing, of course, that risks are systemic and therefore that the tool need to provide a multi-hazard approach to DRR and climate change adaptation. And this tool, of course, as I was saying, is based on a repository of knowledge, a question bank that is looking at 10 different sectoral modules. Therefore, really all the partners of the CADRI have contributed with their specific expertise. And if I go to perhaps a bit more FAO related example to illustrate why it is very important, I would say that why, for example, it is critical for us to have CCA integrated with DRR. I mean, if you look at climate change, I mean, of course, you all know that there are two manifestations. One is the slow changes, and one is the increase in the number, frequency of climate extremes. And at the end of the day, for the farmers we deal with, what matters the most in the near future are the repetition of these extreme events that, of course, affect and destroy their livelihood. Therefore, for us, we are very focused on equipping those farmers in the hotspots of vulnerability with the right tools in terms of disaster risk reduction. And what we see is that, of course, by doing so, we sort of contribute to their longer term adaptation to this new normal. And we have plenty of examples on that. For example, we have worked a lot in the Philippines, and we see that they are affected by a lot of extreme events, drought, floods, etc. And we see that when we equip them with, for example, rice varieties that are more adapted to drought, I mean, even if they use them on a no-regret basis, it will still be beneficial to them. And therefore, I mean, yes, we equip them for disaster risk reduction, but in so doing, we also equip them on the longer term for climate change adaptation. Another aspect which is included in this approach of the new tool is that the new tool is bringing a proper consideration to gender. Which is therefore promoting a truly inclusive approach to make sure no one is, of course, left behind. And the key thing through the tool is to make sure that all these groups are heard. I mean, the women, but also youth, disabled communities. They are heard in the planning, and I would say they are heard in the planning from the very beginning, from the sort of community level up to the institutional level, and therefore influencing policy making. This is also something the CADRI is doing, and in our field, for example, we have the so-called Dimitra Club, which are women's group that can generate dialogue around issues of common interest, and therefore make sure that, I mean, community-generated solutions emerged and can go up the ladder to influence, I would say, up to the policy making. The third aspect that is considered in this in this tool is the conflict sensitivity. Conflict sensitivity is very keen. In our field, again, last week, we issued the so-called Global Report on Food Crisis, and we saw that out of 193 million people in acute food insecurity today, 139, about 75%, live in countries and contexts where the main driver is conflict. It is therefore, and we know also that a lot of these conflicts, yes, are the big conflicts that we all know about, but there are also many conflicts that are that come around the issues of access to natural resources, pasture, water, land, etc. And therefore, for us, it is absolutely critical that this conflict sensitivity dimension be included in any planning process, at the very least to do no harm, but also bearing in mind that through such conflict sensitive analysis, conflict analysis and conflict sensitive programming, you can actually also work towards contributing to even peace. And this is obviously a very important dimension. So this to say that, of course, for us, the tool, the new tool is very important. It is an evolving tool. I mean, it is based on this repository of knowledge, question bank. Therefore, I mean, yes, we, the partners, are feeding this bank, but I think we all count also on the wider community to feed this question bank, so that we can really come with a product, with this what I call the one-stop shop for government to really be able to access the type of analysis diagnostic tool they need for proper planning of DRR and CCA intervention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think you were very well presenting the tool, which sometimes is a bit difficult to understand when you haven't seen it. A tool, as I keep saying, can be a hammer that you use to kill someone or break something, or you can use that tool to shape a better future and build something constructive. And I think it's very hard to understand the CADRI tool. It took myself a lot of time to, understand that this is not some kind of European or some kind of solution being put on countries, but it's context-based, trying to enhance the capacities that are in the countries. So it's a very different way of looking at humanitarian and development assistance. It's about a participatory approach. It's about building on the strengths and the knowledge that are inherent in the countries where we come, depending on the culture, the biology, the natural hazards in that region. So, and as you've said so well, it is really hard to work together and come across and understand that we're here to learn from each other. We are not here, not one single organization or one single person has the solution for everything in the world, but together we can do this. And just to highlight a little bit more around the tool, Carla Linhard here, our analyst at the CADRI Secretariat, will now do a small demonstration for you to see. And as we said, we see this as an evolving system where we learn from the countries and where we together shape the new future. We also use satellite and pictures and mapping and trying to understand different parts. But I'm not going to, now I'm getting it over myself. So please, Carla, go ahead.
Thanks a lot, Angelica. And yes, after my fellow speakers already gave you a very good overview of what the CADRI partnership is all about and the methodology, I hope you're now as excited as I am to finally show you how the digital tool looks like and giving you a demonstration of how to navigate the tool. Because yes, as we've always said, this tool is supposed to be for everyone and accessible to anyone. So if you go to the CADRI partnership website, which you can see here on the screen, you can go directly to the CADRI tool section. And you will be able to access the tool. And here you can already see that you have two different options. Either you can register as a new user and create a user login, so you can have all the access to the different functionalities that the CADRI digital tool allows. Or if you don't want to register, you can still have full access to the question bank, accessing all of the knowledge repository that was mentioned of the CADRI partners. But of course, to get full access to the functionalities, we will log now into the tool interface. So when I log in, you will see I will now be directed first to my user profile, but let me begin by showing you the main dashboard of the CADRI digital tool interface. So as you can see here, we have 4 main sections on the CADRI tool digital interface, which is the mission and countries, the user expert database, the question bank or the heart of the tool, and the help and support section. So in the help and support section, for example, you will have access to all the frequently asked questions that will provide you with all the guidance that you need to confidently navigate the tool interface, as it is very user-friendly. But now let me spend some more time of introducing to you the question bank, which, as I said, is really the heart of the CADRI digital tool, as it is the living knowledge repository of all the CADRI partners who work together to create this data bank of analytical questions. And as you can see here, we already have nearly 6,000 questions today, but still this will continue to grow. And for example, in a mission, when people actually are in the capacity diagnosis analysis, they can of course also create new questions relevant to the country context to this specific mission. Afterwards, as CADRI tool administrators, we will be able to see these new questions here, can review all the newly added questions and decide if they should be incorporated into the main tool question bank. But let me show you how the question bank looks like. So here you get an overview of the question bank. And of course, one of the greatest added value of the CADRI digital tool is the customization of it. So with the CADRI digital tool, it allows to either have a very comprehensive analysis of disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation capacities, but you can also customize your analysis with help of the tool to have a very focused analysis of, for example, national and local preparedness capacities. And you can also customize the analytical frame, of course, in regards to the country context and the priorities that the government or other stakeholders set out in this process. So let me show you an example of how I can customize the question bank. As you can see here, I can select from the different modules that we have to date. And for now, I'm going to select the generic module to have some overall guidance on DRR and CCA. And on top, I'm going to select one of the specific capacities that have already been mentioned, and I'm going to select governance. And as I said, I'm really interested in preparedness, so I'm going to select the preparedness diagnosis. And to even get more specific guidance to guide my analysis, I can further select specific principles. So here in this case, I'm going to select leaving no one behind, to really receive as a result questions that are related to all of my filters. So preparedness related questions that integrate the principle of leaving no one behind. So I'm going to apply all these filters. And as you can see, I'm now given a result of a very reduced number of questions that I can browse through and will get different levels of detailed guidance that I can use for my specific analysis. And because I'm a logged in user, I can also save this frame now. So I can click here, I can give it a name. I can save the subframe to have access to it later every time I log in. And as you can see here, I still have the main question bank, and I can save as many sub-analytical sets as I wish. I can access it. And then I will also be able to download the specific subset of guiding questions. And this, for example, I can take wherever I want. I can use it if I go into interviews. I can also have a space where I add notes. So yes, this is one example. But I would also like to show you another example of how you can navigate through the question bank, because apart from all the filters that I showed here and that have also been discussed when discussing how to customize the question bank, you can also freely add keywords to search for questions. So for example, if I type in flood, I will be able to see across all the different modules, so across sectors and across capacity dimensions, questions that guide me in my flood-specific hazard analysis. But now let me get back to the dashboard because there's other things to explore. For example, the user expert database. So this is really the network that we also use when we deploy expertise in the CADRI capacity diagnosis missions. So these are the registered experts at global and regional level. And of course, as we only launched this tool now, this number will continuously grow, but we already today have above 100 registered experts. And again, here I can look for specific expertise. So for example, if I'm thinking about mobilizing expertise for a specific CADRI capacity diagnosis mission, let's say I'm looking for expertise to deploy to Timor-Leste, I can look for a specific region, so in this case, Asia Pacific. And I can also add a working language. So in this case, I would be interested in Portuguese speakers. And I can even add, for example, a primary area of specialization. And here I'm just going to select disaster risk reduction. And if I apply all of these filters, I'm going to get the exact expertise that I need for this mission. And I can enter the user profile and will be able to see further details like the respective organization and the specialization, and of course also languages that the expert is fluent in. So this is really the basis for us also to, connect and mobilize expertise. And now I'm going to come to the last main part of the tool dashboard, which is the mission and countries. And this is really all about planning and conducting and facilitating this process of a CADRI mission. So as we already heard from the fellow speakers, of course, the tool only helps to facilitate the whole process of a mission. It is a part that is supposed to facilitate our lives and to facilitate our work, so we can easily work together using this digital tool. So here you can see a preliminary set of missions and countries that we for now have created for testing and training purposes. But what I would like to show you now is an example mission. So you can see how this would look like when creating and conducting a mission. So here you can see an example mission for Zambia with the mission description and the main parts, which are the country analytical frame. So this is the set of guiding questions that have been set in the beginning of the process during the scoping mission that are resulting from the terms of reference of the mission, and which of course has been decided in discussion with different stakeholders, first of all, government, the UN, IFRC, and civil society stakeholders. Then we have the report outline, which is basically the product of the CADRI tool. And we can also select and upload a final report. We also have the possibility to upload documents for the desk review that will support the analysis. And if I now scroll down, you will be able to see how the team for this mission is composed. So as you can see, we have a set of different team members and also different roles and responsibilities. We have here, you can see the team leader, and you will also be able to see the area of expertise. And you can see that under the guidance of the team leader, we have separate sub-teams. So here we have the sub-team of environment with respective sub-team leader and team members. And we also have sub-teams for agriculture and food security and infrastructure. And this again is just mirroring how the CADRI process has already been applied successfully in over 30 countries. This is nothing new, how we organize the teams, how we divide roles and responsibilities. But what is really new is that it's now facilitated, and then that we can easily create and allocate these roles and responsibilities, and that team members will easily see what is their part in this mission. But first, let me show you again the country analytical frame, so the overall framework set for this mission, which I said is basically the result of the agreed terms of reference. So here you will be able to see the areas of interest for this mission that have been defined. So in this case, the priority sectors would be agriculture and food security, as well as environment, and priority hazards in this case were defined to be drought and floods. So this results then in a set of questions that are structured in the different modules, and under each module, you will see here the 5 different capacity dimensions. And then under each capacity dimensions, you will have the set of different questions that are used as a guidance for this analysis. So again, this is to facilitate the process of the team coming together, discussing these questions, and to decide how they can use them for the mission. So as you can see here in the overall country analytical frame, as a team leader, I will also be able to assign certain questions to specific users to divide the responsibilities of the team members. So if I now go back and show you an individual user analytical framework, you will be able to see the difference. So here I can also see the different status of the team members and how they can work together. So everybody was assigned certain responsibilities and certain questions for their analysis. So they will be able to also communicate with their sub-team leaders and submit their user analytical frame for review. And the sub-team leader will then have the responsibility to approve and consolidate. So now you can see this is already a reduced number of questions as compared to the overall country analytical frame, of course. So this individual person will only have very specific responsibilities and very specific questions that are allocated to their analysis. And here you will be able to see, for example, under finance, I have a set of questions, and as part of the team, as an assessor, I will be able to assign a score from 1 to 5 in terms of how I assess the gaps, the strengths, the progress in regards to the specific capacity that is asked. I will be able to add my justification for the scoring and a consolidation of findings. And also I will be able to add specific recommendations, which will then, of course, later, again, in a team process, be discussed, consolidated, and after the different members, sub-team leaders, and team leader have come together, discussed, and consolidated their inputs, as I said, the final product will be the report outline. And this is, again, something facilitated by the digital tool because it is generated automatically once you approve your findings. So this is how the report outline would look like. You have a structure of general findings, sector-specific findings, and hazards. So here, as we have said in the beginning, drought and floods as priority hazards, we will have here the analysis. And we also have the sector-specific findings. So for example, under agriculture and food security, you will have here an automated visualization of the consolidated scores across the different dimensions of capacities, so governance, financing, knowledge, and you will have it here as a graph. And then under each capacity dimension, so here under governance, you will see all the consolidated findings as well as recommendations, and you will also still be able to track which team member provided which score and recommendations. So coming now back to the main dashboard, this is all what I wanted to show you for today. I hope you got excited to try it out yourself, to register on this digital tool interface. And yes, just in summary, the main added value is really this live knowledge repository that also builds a common knowledge across different sectors that brings different experts together in this process. Although, of course, it facilitates a CADRI capacity diagnosis mission, but of course, it also facilitates a government and their process if they would like to use it without any CADRI support, and also it is open to other users. So with this, I would like to end my demonstration and give over to you, Angelica. Thanks.
Thank you, Carla. I mean, this is very comprehensive. And as you said, this is nothing new. This is something that CADRI has done for many years. And it gives us a digital analytic tool to share the information that was, used by us. I also wanted to mention that this is a partnership, so it's not very costly. This is not an NGO in itself. It doesn't take a lot of money. It is the existing partners who work and provide the expertise they have. And that's why it's such a cost-efficient way of working as well. And with no further ado, I'll now give the word to Mr. Shang-Hoon Xu, who is the coordinator of disaster risk reduction and resilient approaches and tools at IFRC. Sorry. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Angelica. Yeah, good morning, good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to extend my very warm congratulations to the CADRI Secretariat on launching this digital tool, which is a very valuable outcome of interagency effort. IFRC is very pleased not only to have contributed to the development of this digital tool, but also to benefit directly from this digital tool in enhancing our activities, especially humanitarian, the anticipatory actions. Anticipatory actions, as previous speakers mentioned, are very important in saving lives and livelihoods. According to the estimation of the World Bank and the WMO, 23,000 lives could be saved per year. And annually we can have a benefit of $162 billion we can save if we improve the forecasting systems, early warning, early action systems, and climate information. Then what we mean by anticipatory actions, these are the actions which are taken before disaster happens to prevent and mitigate its impact. And these actions are usually taken in anticipation of potential disaster impact. And also it is carried out based on the prediction how the event will unfold. Usually the process of anticipatory actions consists of 7 steps. First and foremost, the risk assessment. It is a very in-depth analysis of risks in different areas. And then based on that, we work on identifying the existing forecasting systems, and also the capacity to issue timely and efficient forecast to the areas concerned. Then based on that, we work on identifying and determining the levels of potential hazard impact. And then we work on identifying potential early actions which are appropriate to prevent and mitigate the potential disaster impact. Based on that, these early actions identified are reflected in the early action protocols. This protocol, once developed, has to be agreed between different ministries and also partners concerned. Then once the EAP is approved, then we work on monitoring the forecast. So if the danger level exceeds the trigger level, then the EAP is activated. And if the danger level does not exceed the trigger level, then we continue monitoring the situation. Next. Yeah, this is an example of the activation of the early action protocol in Mozambique in 2021. So in March 2019, the Mozambique Red Cross, they developed the early action protocol in collaboration with different partners. And And once EAP was approved, the National Society was able to procure necessary items like shelter strengthening kits, water purification tablets, and buckets. At the same time, they were also able to carry out various readiness activities like the first aid training and the training of construction workers and so on. Then in December 2020, there was a forecast that certain areas and a large number of people would be affected by a tropical storm. So 2 days before the storm made a landfall, the EAP was activated, allowing the National Society to issue early warning messages and also providing necessary items to the people in the potential target areas. The types of early actions and also the anticipatory actions vary from one hazard to another, and also from one country to another. And also they very much depend on the context where the operation will take place. And also they depend very much on the national and local capacity. There is a precondition for activating anticipatory actions. The most important one is the pre-agreed plan of action. And this action should include all necessary the risks and also trigger levels and also early actions to be carried out. And also how these actions will be supported through what kind of funding mechanisms. And also the plan has to be improved and finalized through simulation drills. All this requires a lot of information about the capacity, risk, and the risk governance systems, impact levels, and also the preparedness capacity of the national and local authorities and the stakeholders, as well as the funding mechanisms. So luckily, with the development of the CADRI digital tool, a lot of information we can extract from this tool or the diagnosis missions that will take place. And also a lot of information we can collect with the help of the question bank, which was developed which is part of this digital tool. Because as Carla explained, there are core capacities, and also by using the filter, we can extract the relevant questions to be used in a feasibility study for early action protocols. For example, there are core capacity dimensions, including governance, implementation capacity, financing, knowledge, technology, and equipment. So by using the relevant questions, we can extract the data regarding the legislations and policies that are put in place, and also the institutional mandates of different government ministries and roles and responsibilities of different stakeholders. Also, we can get information about the implementation capacity of the target countries or local authorities, including the communication flows, if there is a forecast, how it is transferred to the relevant areas and people. More importantly, we can get information about the funding mechanisms, especially what is the national budget or local budget, which can be used in activating early actions. If the budget is not strong enough, then we should identify the means of funding and who will fund this one. And for the IFRC, we have a special fund to support such anticipation actions. And also there are other opportunities as well. But these funding mechanisms has to be identified and included in the early action protocol. And also a lot of data regarding the anticipatory actions are related to knowledge and technology. So especially when it comes to forecasting, we need a lot of information regarding the current forecasting systems in the country, as well as how these will be forwarded to the to the areas that are exposed to the forthcoming disaster. So we are very excited to using this digital tool because this will provide us with an opportunity to not only getting the general data, but also this will enable us to the anticipatory action specific analysis of the capacities of the countries we are going to work with. Currently, with partners including FAO, UN OCHA, WFP, START Network, we are working in 70 countries with anticipatory actions. But with the support of the CADRI tool and with increasing partnership with other partners, we are hoping to reach more countries with anticipatory actions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it's a historic day today when we can present a joint co-created tool, an analytic framework to save lives across the world. Now opening up for questions, both from people in the room and in the chat. We have people helping me to read the chat. So are there any questions? I mean, the panel have explained very well, but it might be an opportunity for you to. No questions at all? Yes, please go ahead. Say your name and press the little green thing there.
Hi, good morning. I'm Stephanie Afonso from the Mission of Luxembourg. The ambassador excuses himself for not being able to be here with us today. Thank you to all speakers to a very interesting presentation. I do have a few questions. So lately, there's obviously been an inflation of pledging events, considering what's happening around the world. And more focus is given to anticipatory action. I was wondering how the CADRI tool might convince donors that are actually responding to immediate crisis to invest more in anticipatory action. Going back to the tool itself, I was going through it and I was wondering if a non-expert like myself could actually give input in the question bank. How are the questions that are the inputs that are being received? How are they being analyzed to make sure that they can actually be properly used by the people themselves or the mission leaders for the implementation of the tool and the use of the questions. And finally, yes, I'd like to hear a bit more. So I thank you for the diverse panel. We have colleagues from FAO and IFRC. I was also wondering, going back to anticipatory action and thinking about OCHA's role in the humanitarian sector, if other UN agencies are proactively using this tool or intending to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll start answering a little bit because I find it interesting about the pledging, because the point of preventing is to have less funding needed for this. So yes, I think all of us are committed to use this well in order to reduce costs and save more lives. And I know that also in the third question of yours, if OCHA and others are using, yes, OCHA is a full member. We couldn't have all the 20 partners on the panel here today, even if we wished so. And it is being used in different types of environments and in different countries, but we always count on some kind of national involvement. We don't want this to be a mechanism like a drone coming in from another territory and going in. So in some countries where there is outrage war, it is difficult to use this assessment tool. But I'm sure some of the questions will be used in country as access is, depending on the context, because it's very much based on the context. I'll also ask the panel to respond to you in regards, would you like? I see Fao here nodding a lot, so I'm giving him the floor. And after that, Ronald.
Well, thank you very much, Angelica, and thank you to the mission of the representative of Luxembourg. And again, thank you for your support in enabling the development of this tool. And perhaps I will elaborate on the first part of your question. I mean, how and why to invest more in anticipatory action. And I think this is a question on which working with our partners, including in the RIP partnership and in the Anticipation Hub, all these platforms that have been established, we have been very keen to work on documenting return on investment. I think the best way we can do to indeed make our case and convince partners to invest more in that sort of approach is by indeed documenting the return on investment. And this is why, for example, in the field of food security, from the very beginning, we have been able to document return on investment. And I think we were always very surprised by the scale of the return on investment. And even if we were looking, we were looking only at the value of assets losses, avoided losses, sorry. So in other words, we had, for example, we work on drought, impact of drought on pastoralists, etc. We were just looking at the value of the animals that were not lost because of anticipatory action. So it means we were not looking at the value of humanitarian assistance that would have to be provided. We would not count the nutritional impact. We did not count even the resilience impact that such action would have. And return on investment, they were ranging from $3 to $9 for each dollars that were invested in that sort of thing. So huge return on investment. And we have been doing that sort of investment, return on investment on a range of action on relatively small intervention. But then 2 years ago, you may remember there was the big desert locust upsurge in the Horn of Africa. And there we adopted this anticipatory action approach. And there we saw that, I mean, when we engage with that sort of anticipatory action approach at scale, I mean, the return on investment can really be considerable, and therefore we can avoid, I mean, reduce the total ask, of course, in terms of potential humanitarian action. So to my mind, to make the case, you need to go to the partners, you need to convince the partner with hard figures in hand, showing, okay, if you embark into that sort of thing, here is the result. And it's clear that with tools such as the CADRI tools, I mean, we have now a range of questions, etc., that enable us to really have a much more structured and articulated approach, I would say. Thank you.
Thank you. Ronald, you wanted to?
Yeah, I think Dominic touched a very important point I want to add to this, which is the importance of capturing the economic value. It's a very, very important point that should not be understated as a means of convincing not only donors, but I think even governments themselves in terms of how they capitalize on this tool, investing behind the information that the tool produces. And in fact, if you look at the different data sets that are being collected, it gives you an insight into some of the underlying drivers that leads to the sort of outcomes, that we see. Certainly capturing, information on governance, on capacity generally, gives you a very good sense of how countries are going to be dealing with these issues, how they deal with them prior to, and when I say prior, I'm not just talking about, a week, 2 weeks before, but in a sort of longer term context, how they deal with these particular issues. I used to use a particular formula or acronym STEEP-R, in terms of looking at analyzing how countries fare from the point of social, technological, economic, environment, political, and then risk within that, to give you a very good sense of where they are and how different types of hazard events are likely to play out in that context. So I think that's something we need to look at in terms of what's the tool producing, and how does this further the ambition that we all say, including many of our donors, we want to end humanitarian need or reduce it. To do that, certainly the information there allows us to be able to anticipate and act, not just in the sort of short-term run-up, but I think we need to look at this across a number of different timescales. So if we're talking to donors and we're really, sort of walking the talk around ending humanitarian need, protecting development gains, then the information that the tool produces really provides a solid platform for us to do the sort of scenarios and hard analytics to drive decision intelligence. Yeah.
Thanks. I also urge our members who are online, if you want to raise your hand or write in the chat if you have questions. I see another one from the room here. Oh, sorry. Would you?
Yes, I think
Yes.
there was one more question that I would like to address, because it was more tool related about the question bank. And so, and please come in again if I don't remember your question correctly, but so about the question bank and how it should be used in reality. So the idea is not that it is a question bank set into stone and that you should use the question and go with this question into an interview and ask this specific question, but rather the challenge and also the beauty of this digital tool is that it's a constantly evolving repository of knowledge and guiding questions, and of course involving many experts. So, and these experts coming together then in this process of a mission will then enter into a discussion and decide based on the country context, and during the mission they will decide then, okay, which questions are relevant for the specific context, or do we need to adapt, do we need to find new questions that should be guiding us in this analysis in this specific context. And then of course after this process, then these newly added questions will then be reviewed by a team of administrators to decide, okay, is this just relevant to one country context? Is this something that we will add to the general question bank, which itself, yes, will be constantly evolving. So yes, thanks, Angelica.
No worries. I think you got most of the responses. I'll pass the word to Madam here.
Hi, thank you first of all for sharing your experience and expertise. My name is Elaine Donderer. I am the founder of Humareto, the Human Network, and we work a lot with a human-centered approach to situational awareness and information management. So as you mentioned, your inclusive process and all of this would be interesting for me to know how this tool accounts for, but also empowers indigenous bodies of knowledge. Or are there some success stories or missed opportunities that you can share here? Thank you.
Does anyone, I can start attempting, because I've been together with colleagues from UNDP doing some impact studies on how this tool has been seen 5 years later, it's been used, etc. So as we said in the beginning, the launch of today is not the launch of the whole CADRI system, it is the digital tool, so to speak. And I think, and correct me, Ruben, if I'm wrong, but for example, in Bolivia, who has a great indigenous community, the tool is trying to reflect, it might not have all the languages in a country. I don't know how many languages there are in Bolivia nationally, but I remember there are 22, for example, in Guatemala. So they would probably reflect one or two of the major languages and taking into account as much as possible the indigenous communities and depending on the context. So because the digital tool is based on the country context, it would also include, as we heard here, all the people in that country. Internally displaced, refugees, young, middle-aged, normal, whatever age is normal for us, as well as the indigenous communities. Mr. Xu, you want to add on to this question? And then
yes, so the inclusive TRI has been considered as one of the very important elements of the CADRI digital tool. So the one cross-cutting theme that was chosen was leaving no one behind. And the two agencies, UN Women and IFRC, worked extensively on including relevant elements into this area. So the question bank and the questions around this inclusive TRI and leaving no one behind are designed in a way that checking who is really participating in the TRI and climate change adaptation activities and who are not included and why they are not there. So the questions help users identify the strengths and weakness in this area and then come up with relevant steps and recommendations.
Ronald.
And just quickly, just to add to what the colleagues have shared, is the tool is just being launched, but I think the methodology, which is what's behind the tool itself and what has been applied historically, do adhere to the principles. You talked about indigenous knowledge, and I see that not only as looking at indigenous people, but also local. The general nature of local knowledge that is produced by people within the countries. And it's, again, the principles behind the CADRI methodology is that it is government-led, government-driven. And so therefore, that is about drawing on indigenous knowledge to inform the sort of processes that come out of it. So in the past, that's been the sort of approach. Going forward in the future, and as demonstrated by the tool itself, you will see where these principles are very much built into the design of the tool, and which will be leveraged to address some of those key issues that you've raised. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any more questions in the room? No. But we have a few. Yes, please, Carla, go ahead.
Also to just add on this question on inclusion, of course, we also have the tool that now supports the analysis and really mainstreams and makes sure that these aspects are taken into account in the analysis, but also just again to highlight that, of course, it's not only about to be integrated into the analysis when analyzing capacities, but also making them a part of this process and making them part of the assessment team. So, for example, when we're in a scoping process, which is the process before a country mission, where we enter into discussion with the different stakeholders to define the scope of the mission, the areas of interest, priority sectors, hazards, but also vulnerable population groups that are of interest or that are relevant in this country context, then of course we enter into a discussion right from the start. We are guided by our colleagues in the country who would of course know best who are the groups that we should also engage in this process. If there are community groups, youth groups, indigenous groups that we then also integrate in this process. Thanks.
I might add, like for the last 30 years, I've worked with participatory approaches and human-centered approach, and it's a lot about listening and coming together. But when you sit in communities, there are all kinds of views as well. It's not that everyone there would look at development or how they want the community to evolve the same way. So it is a lot of power struggles, as mentioned here, over resources, water, historic claims, and families who have intertwined for generations. So as we said, the tool is also trying to be conflict sensitive, and it's trying to listen and have an approach that would help as many as possible. But I mean, I've sometimes wondered if this tool was, I'm personally from Sweden, so if this was used in Sweden to enhance, because we have a lot of problems in my country with floodings and fires, and also in poor areas of the country where people were more prone to the pandemic, more people died, etc., and how it would have been used if, you know, politicians across the world look at what are the hazards, what are the risks, how can we enhance a better future for the people in the country where we are. And I didn't want to end the conversation on this. I see there are some questions still. Do you understand the tool fully? I think we're also looking into how to connect this better with satellite images of disasters, of the weather conditions, and putting these maps of HIV prevalence, you know, overlapping with what are food insecurity needs, etc., to look at it at a multidimensional approach. Yes? If there's no more questions, I think we'll give each panelist 2 minutes to round up, if that's okay. And I'll start in this end then with Dominic.
Well, no, just thank you very much. I think it was indeed a very useful session, because I see it as really, as Ronald said, this is about partnership. This is about 20 partners coming together to pull together their experience and expertise in the field of DRR and climate change adaptation, also considering all these aspects of inclusivity, conflict sensitivity. I think, well, there are not many initiatives like that. It might be the only one. And no, again, I think the CADRI has always, to my mind, had some difficulties to be widely known by the community. Yet it is very useful. It is and I think now the challenge is to make sure that all the UN country teams and governments knows that it is there, and that they will be able to tap on this resource to indeed have a more robust planning at a time where this is perhaps more needed than ever.
Yes.
Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you, Ronald.
Yep, just briefly, because I think much has indeed been said. Before I give my last comments, I also want to add my voice, because I think I didn't, to my colleagues who thank the government of Luxembourg for the partnership on this particular journey, because it was a partnership more than simply just providing financing. And I think we want to really reflect that. But also for those who are participating, I think we have quite a robust enough participation online, as well as those here, that calling on you to also be ambassadors for this. I come to this particular partnership as a new kid, even though Dominic, 2 years may no longer be considered new. But from where I've come, I was pleased to find that there is this flagship within the UN system. And many of us have talked about the need to be one UN, and I often look at it with the lens of a former government representative. And these are the kinds of things that I think governments are looking for, where the UN system can come together around some common goals, common objectives, and to leverage resources across this UN system to deliver impact. And you do see sort of macro returns on this type of investment. It is indeed a value proposition. Our chair spoke about the minimal cost associated with operating this, because it's invested in by many of us in terms of our time. I mean, where will you find that sort of return on an investment of this nature, both in terms of the human resource deployment, but in terms of the output that can come from it? So I really want to commend that to all here, online and virtually, and to as Dominic says, it's not often known. And we as institutions, the 20 partners, are talking about how we can even increase the visibility internally and externally. Well, I'm co-opting you as soldiers in that cause as well, right? To help market this particular opportunity with our governments, because it is indeed a value proposition. Thanks.
Thank you. Carla?
Thanks, Angelica, and also, yeah, thanks again to all of you sitting here with us in this room and also connected online for the interest in this event, the interest in our partnership, and of course the digital tool. I think today has been all about, yeah, how really partnerships, but also innovation, how digital tools can really help governments, can help reduce disaster risk reduction. And yes, maybe one little thing that we are also excited about in the CADRI partnership is today is the launch of the tool, but of course we also want to finally use the tool in country. So this is what we're really excited about for this year, so that at the next event, hopefully we will also be able to share with you first experiences, lessons, also voices from the field, from governments, from all the different stakeholders participating in these missions, how useful the tool is for them, and also what we can still learn and improve. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. And Mr. Chu?
Yes, through a partnership with like-minded stakeholders and agencies, CADRI has played a very important role in diagnosing the capacity of countries and supporting their efforts to improve their preparedness capacity. I believe the new tool, the digital tool, will play an important part in streamlining the capacity diagnosis missions and make the process more dynamic. And many agencies and also countries, I'm sure, will benefit from this digital tool in enhancing their various activities for DRR and climate change adaptation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think, as Carla said, we have just had a mission in Madagascar, and a new one is coming in a week or two in East Timor. So keep updated on our net and subscribe for the newsletter, and give our panelists an applause for their participation. And special thanks to Luxembourg. I think we should have had a ribbon to cut or something to press, but at least we're here in live, which is the first time we actually meet and see each other. So thank you, everyone, and have just a good day. Bye-bye.